a guy from Stockholm, Thomas God. He passed away a couple of years ago. I had the privilege of working together with him for 2 years, building a few brands together. And he has had some really interesting thoughts. In the end, he's written a couple of books. I'm going to point to those as well if you're interested in branding in general in the internet age as well. I don't know, has anybody heard of Thomas God before here? Nope. This is him. So Thomas's main thesis was that branding is the management of people's perceptions. And what he meant by this was that people are going to have a perception of you no matter if you manage it or not. So people are going to perceive you as a persona or your company in some way depending on where they've come across you. So if they come across a sales guy at a trade show who's very sort of pushy, they might have a different perception. If they go to your website with pink colors and sort of very Cyrillic fonts and stuff, they will have a different perception of you. And if you have these two examples in the same company, they're going to be really, really confused. So the main point is actually to manage that brand in some way. Thomas actually had the privilege of working with one of the biggest brands in the world. The joy of driving, which is BMW's slogan, was his creation. He was the one who took Microsoft to the Nordics in the 80s. Nordics was the top performing country in the world when, no, not in the 80s, 95, so Windows 95 came out. Also, he was good friends with Virgin's, what's this called? Richard Branson, and created their brand as well. So he worked with the heavy hitters in the world. So I'm just trying to sort of give his speech again from like out of respect to him. So if we think about the brand, a brand is of course the product itself. Apple is a good example. If you think about the product, you think about the packaging of the product, you think about the stores where they're actually selling the products, you think of the support, you're thinking about new products that they come out with, and you think about the logo even. They all speak the same thing, and in this case it's simplicity. They want to simplify things for you. The logo is very simplified. It's not a three-dimensional logo or anything like that. Their fonts are selected with that same emphasis as well. This doesn't, of course, mean that they would have to, that everybody's brand should be about simplicity. Of course not. I mean, companies are built with different goals. Bezos built Amazon with the purpose of cutting corners in the beginning and moving fast. Facebook in the beginning, their slogan was move fast and break things, pretty much the same. Today, it's more about stability because they can't break things anymore because they're too big. So brands also evolve over time when the company matures and the products mature. Another example that I like to show is MailChimp. How many here have seen or used MailChimp? Yeah. So MailChimp, it's a bunch of guys, I think they're from Vancouver or Seattle. They're on the West Coast in the US or Canada. And they founded it as a hobby project in the beginning. They were tired of these different clunky systems of sending emails, and they wanted to make it easy and fun. So the fun part is very visible, at least in their old brand. So they are also evolved. The brand looks very different nowadays. But in the beginning, people were afraid of sending emails to 10,000 people. So they had this fun monkey here, which was part of their brand. And the monkey shows you that it's not scary to push the button to send that. So this was animated. There was a guy pushing the big red button that, hey, you shouldn't be afraid of this, just send the emails right now. So now you got some perception of what branding is. Usually, however, people think of branding as the visual part. And I like to put a cross over that because it is that for sure, but people associate way too much with the actual visuals compared to everything else. Branding as its core should dictate what features your product has even. So this shoe over here has 20 different features. Branding is the way your salespeople talk on the phone. Branding is what your CEO's email footer looks like. Branding is the wording that your marketing department uses in their copy, in their blog posts. And I kind of selected these pictures on purpose because if your brand looked like this, you're talking about printing trees, perfectly balanced, kind of vague words, very many features and very aggressive sales guy. Most likely your customers will be pretty confused at what you're about, because they are quite different. They're not like Apple, they're not simplicity to the core. Another fun logo I want to show. So the font you choose changes it quite a bit. What if these logos that we all know very well, what if they looked like this? So there's a purpose why they have been looking like they have been looking. Because they tell a quite different story in Comic Sans font compared to what their actual fonts are. So one of Thomas's theses was he was working with the big brands before the internet even became a thing. He was, I think, the first Swedish person to direct a Super Bowl ad about Svensk Snus in the 70s, so he had a history before the internet happened. His point was that the internet actually changed branding forever, but sadly 99.9% of the companies are still stuck in the pre-internet way, in the way they are doing branding and marketing. So before the internet happened, this is how we did marketing and branding. It was the industrial age. We produced things in mass, they looked the same, they felt the same, and the way to do marketing was to tell people about the product. And again, this is what it looks like. We feed that same picture, and in the end, people go and try it out, and they get the same feeling. I mean, this is why we have the Big Mac index today. Or anywhere in the world, you go to Thailand or Sweden or the UK, it always looks the same and tastes the same. They have so standardized everything. That's industrialization for you. Same with cars, same with any brands at all. Pepsi is another example, still stuck in the old way of, sorry for somebody from Pepsi here, but stuck in the old way of doing branding. The product is at the core. They try to bring some funness to it, they try to do something else with it in social media and so forth, but at the core it's the product. You tell about the product and people go and consume the product. So the core there is, it's a transactional brand. It's a transaction between your company and the consumers. So the product is the brand, so you say what you sell, basically. And the internet changed this. And this is the way it basically changed. You've all seen these people sitting and communicating with each other, but communicating digitally with each other. So before the transactional brand, everything was force-fed to us in a sense from a branding or advertising point of view. We saw some billboards on the roads, we saw some magazine ads. We had no way of communicating with anybody else or the companies themselves. Thanks to the internet, we now had a chance to go and talk to the companies. We had a chance to challenge them. We had the chance to talk to each other without the company even knowing that we're talking about them. These again are called relational brands. You're building relationship. The brand is the relationship between the users and the company's touch points. The company's touch points being the salespeople, the email footers, the copy on the website, the product and everything there. So this is a lot harder, but it's also a lot more interesting. You're trying to build brands in a way that you have some control over them, and you want to control that it's managed in some way. Nintendo Wii was launched this way. So Nintendo did a very interesting thing. They saw that most people were playing with their PlayStations alone. PlayStation gaming is a sort of hardcore sport compared to Wii. They started instead that they were going to go after these stay-at-home moms that go to these Tupperware clubs. They're going to launch the Wii there. They managed these people, they listened to them, what they want. They wanted to have people, their family working together and playing, like doing something together instead of the youngsters staying in their rooms and playing together. They communicated with these small groups, and through this was the way that we actually became big in the US, through these new sales channels, but also managing these sales channels. The third thing that was Thomas's thesis was that nothing else than the brand separates competing companies. And this is especially true if we look at a few pictures. So we have Puma shoes, Nike shoes. They can both afford the same designers, they can afford the same raw material, they are manufactured in the same factory somewhere by the same people, even in different shifts. Everything is the same with the products except the brand, what's in your head. So some of you have some associations with Nike that just do it, it's the top athletes. Some people have the same association with Puma, or the other way around, maybe Adidas or somebody else. So at the end of the day, the really valuable thing is what is inside your consumers' heads. A couple of banks from the US, very different brands. A couple of years ago, Wells Fargo was in real trouble because of some internal sales challenges where people were upselling different credit cards for 5 to 10 credit cards to the same people and stuff like that. Bank of America did not do that. These two companies can afford the same clothes. You have different associations with these for sure. The products are made with the same fabric, with the same people, same designs even. They may be laid out in a different way, but that's part of the brand. So now you're trying to think that, okay, what if my company is like a new online bank, for instance, that comes out of Norway? How can I take the biggest US bank head on? The founder of Body Shop said that if you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. So smaller companies can make a big splash, and that's true branding. That's basically a background to branding. If you're interested in hearing more or reading more, Thomas's good 4D branding is really good. Another one, I actually had the chance of reading this book. This came out after his death, but I was actually one of the reviewers, or like a pre-reviewer to this customer experience branding. Both of them have a foreword by Richard Branson as well. These talk about how to do branding, and I'm going to just quickly touch upon the 4D branding, which was sort of Thomas's way of doing branding. So this is maybe a little bit, a small teaser to you guys. If you go back to your companies, you want to clarify your brand somehow. Thomas had this way of creating brands through this 4D mind space. So you have a functional dimension, mental dimension, social dimension, and spiritual dimension. The functional dimension is basically the features, the functionality of your product. Mental dimension is how does it help me as an individual. The social dimension is how does it help us as a group. Spiritual dimension is how does it make the world a better place, so to speak. I have one example here, a screenshot from his book even, but something I like to use here usually is Harley Davidson. So Harley Davidson for us as individual is the freedom to ride alone on the roads, and that's Harley Davidson's mental dimension. The social dimension is maybe the motorcycle gangs, maybe in a positive, maybe in a negative sense, but still it's the sort of the group dynamics that Harley Davidson is built around that. Functionality is the sound that comes out of it and the horsepower and so forth. Something you might know better here, IKEA. So IKEA, the functional dimension, IKEA gives me good contemporary design and function, good value for money. The mental dimension for me as an individual is that IKEA engages me in doing some of the work myself. I also get inspiration and ideas. See that they turn this negative thing into a positive thing. Here you have to do some stuff on yourself. Social dimension, buying at IKEA makes me seem savvy. It shows that I appreciate value for money and like good contemporary design. And spiritual dimension, which I know is at the core of IKEA, is that IKEA drives the democratic process in the world, both by the way they work and by giving more people opportunity to create a better everyday life. So if you throw all of this together, I think if everybody at IKEA understands this, you get the same kind of results that when you asked a cleaning lady at NASA that what do you do here, and she answers that we are sending men to space. So a cleaning lady working there. So through this branding, you can internally get everybody to understand it. And when internally everybody understands this, then externally people will most likely understand you the same way as well. I'm going to skip some of these parts here, but as a teaser, a final note, how to build these different mind spaces that if you want to go and try with your teams later on. Branding mind spaces, it usually works through images best. Get a group together, throw some images of what really defines your product's functionality. Is it the power, the freedom, the lightweightness, the contemporary design, the mental dimension, calm of mind, social dimension, doing things together, sharing as a community, and spiritual dimension of saving the users from crappy UX, for instance. This is actually a case that I was working with Thomas on. That's it. This was sort of the add-on that we just threw in here outside the actual part. Any questions from you guys at this point?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you compare it to the Simon Sinek, why, how,
Yeah.
how do you like separate them?
I actually written a Medium post about that, so I can share that with you later on, but it's very close to that. So when you actually start creating the brand, the why is the most important part of it. And it's very relatable. It comes to the process basically after you've started doing the mind space with the images, and then you try to understand why you actually exist, and then at the end you don't even have to explain what you're doing. So there's another, I have a slide deck about Tesla as well. Thomas wasn't involved in it, but I got in the slides from him. So Tesla's existence being to accelerate the transformation to sustainable energy or whatever it is. So if you look at Musk's speeches when he launched the Model 3, for instance, he was only talking about that. He didn't even have to mention what they're doing. Everybody knew that he's going to launch the new car by just saying those words, why they exist. But that comes to the process sort of a bit later on in the branding. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. Should we jump to that?
Yeah.